In the 20th century, some countries weren't governed like institutions. They were governed like the story of one man, Saddam Hussein, a name people were divided over for decades. This is not a video of glorification and not a video of insult. This is a documentary that tries to understand how it all happened, how a man rose from the margins of the countryside and reached the very top of the state, and how the story ended in a single day. In this film, we'll walk the timeline from the beginning to the final day. April 28, 1937, Saddam Hussein is born in Al-Dawr, near Tikrit, Iraq at that time, was living through a clear contradiction. Cities changing slowly, and a countryside ruled by a different logic. The tribe, reputation, and the ability to deter. In his early years, life wasn't stable or guaranteed. Poverty was ever present, and moving between relatives' homes was part of daily reality for many families. Here, the first line of a future political character begins to form, a constant sense that security is something you seize, not something you're given. And with time, the young man moves closer to the city and begins to see that power isn't just a policeman or a tribal chief. Power is the state itself. The 1950s and 60s weren't just years. They were a period in which Iraq was trying to define itself. Who rules? By what legitimacy? And in which direction? In those years, politics didn't look like modern politics. No debates, no ballot boxes, but a direct struggle over the state itself. And here, the Ba'ath Party emerges as part of a wider wave of Arab nationalism. Many young men saw it as a project for a strong state, while its opponents saw it as a path to domination. Saddam becomes involved in the party organization and in clandestine work. Clandestine work doesn't produce polished speeches. It produces hard rules. Don't trust quickly. Typical, don't show all your cards. And above all, loyalty before anything else. By the end of the 1960s, a moment arrives that changes the course of everything. In 1968, the Ba'ath Party comes to power. The president is in the spotlight, but inside the state, someone is quietly securing his place. In the 1970s, we see a state expanding. More jobs, more projects, infrastructure, institutions. But in parallel, something else expands too, the security and surveillance apparatus. In this phase, Saddam learns a dangerous political lesson. Achievement can create legitimacy, but fear protects it. And the state begins, gradually, to turn into a network of committees, reports, monitoring, and loyalties. Oil wasn't just an economic resource. It was the key to building a modern state. With the nationalization of the oil sector and rising revenues, a new face of Iraq began to appear. Expansion in education and public services, projects, roads, buildings. But money in a centralized state isn't just a number. Money means influence, and influence means the ability to shape the state the way you want. In this phase, Saddam moves closer to the center of decision-making, and his presence grows stronger, even before he becomes president, officially. In 1975, the Algiers Agreement between Iraq and Iran. On the surface, a border settlement that ends a dispute. In practice, a political truce, not a lasting peace. Because some conflicts don't end with a document. They end only when the balance of power shifts or when tension erupts again. July 16, 1979. Saddam becomes president officially. Here, a different phase begins. The state no longer runs through institutions alone, but through one man at the top. In systems built this way, the rule is unwritten, yet unmistakably clear. Anyone who draws near to the center must be guaranteed, and anyone the center doubts is removed. And over time, power becomes more concentrated in the media, in the army, in the party, in every joint of the state. September 1980, war breaks out between Iraq and Iran. At first, many believed it would be quick, but major wars are rarely what politicians imagine. Year after year, the war turns into attrition, an economy wearing down, a society growing exhausted, resources pulled toward the front, and the state's message becomes, we're fighting for existence. And with each year of war, the state changes from within. Security expands, surveillance tightens, and the space for dissent shrinks because wartime justifies everything. By the end of the 1980s, the fighting ends officially, but the country emerges drained, and the state of emergency is no longer temporary. It becomes a way of governing life. During this period, deadly events were also recorded against groups inside Iraq, pillars that remained at the center of political and human rights debate even after the regime fell. August 2nd, 1990, the invasion of Kuwait. One decision that opened the door to a major international confrontation. In the months that followed, mounting international pressure, United Nations resolutions, then the Gulf War in 1991, and after the war, an entirely different phase begins. Years of sanctions and blockade. Here, we're not talking about politics alone, but the day-to-day reality of a society. Prices rising, services collapsing, life growing harder, and the state trying to hold itself together by managing the crisis rather than ending it. By the late 1990s, Iraq looks like a worn-out country, but the regime still stands. And the clock is moving toward 2003. In 2003, a U.S.-led military intervention and the fall of Baghdad. Within days, the structure of the state that had existed begins to break apart. Then comes the greatest symbolic shift. Saddam disappears. The man who was seen everywhere is suddenly out of frame. Then come months of rumors, leaks, and attempts to trace the inner network of loyalists, until one night ended everything. December 13th, 2003. A planned military operation, not a routine patrol. In the months leading up to it, forces had been gathering intelligence step by step. Arrests within the surrounding network, interrogations, and monitoring movement in specific areas near Tikrit. That night, forces reached an agricultural area near the town of Al-Dawr. The objective was to search locations suspected of being used as support points or hideouts. The search begins house by house, orchard by orchard. In places like this, hiding isn't done in a palace, but in something that doesn't draw attention. A storeroom, a barn, a pit, or an underground room. After an initial search of 2 locations, the target did not appear, but the sweep didn't stop. Between 2 points, the soldiers notice something that doesn't look natural. Soil that has been rearranged, a concealed cover, an opening that only becomes visible when you get very close. The cover is lifted. A narrow passage appears, leading to a small underground hideout. The space is extremely cramped, built to conceal just one person. No major battle, no heavy gunfire the way some might imagine. He is brought out of the hideout, and his identity is confirmed. The moment of capture wasn't just the end of a political story. It was the end of an entire idea. The idea of the untouchable man, now under control, paving the way for the courtroom. After the capture, a completely different phase begins. The phase of the courts and the trials. In this stage, Saddam is no longer a head of state on the screen, but a defendant facing judges and case files. Files from the past are reopened. Decisions, events, victims, testimonies. The case that ended with a final verdict was the Dujal case. And after a series of hearings, the death sentence was issued. Whatever the disagreements over the trial and its conditions, the scene itself was historic. A former president in the dock and an entire regime being folded away under the eyes of the world. December 30, 2006, at dawn, the sentence was carried out. Saddam Hussein's life ended, but his impact did not end in that same moment. Because some figures don't leave behind a biography alone. They leave behind an entire state forced to redefine itself. Politics, identity, security, and a struggle over the future. And in the end, history doesn't judge individuals alone. History judges systems and decisions and the years that reshape the lives of generations.